I don't support Joe Biden at all, but I want you to know what MoonCult did here is really underhanded.
The culture, our culture, our culture. It's not imported from some African nation or some Asian nation. It's our English jurisprudential culture, our European culture.
They totally misrepresented what Biden is saying here. And at the end of this video, I'll show you who I am supporting and why.
1 in 5 women going off to college are abused, usually in the first 3 semesters. Sexual abuse. You know what else I found out? The more prestigious the college, the less they wanted to do. They're supposed to take a survey. All they have to do is take a blind survey at the beginning of school. How many of you students have, in fact, been accosted or having something happen? They get an idea how bad the problem may or may not be on campus. They don't want to do it. You know why? If you're going to Penn or Harvard or Yale or Brown or whatever, and you have to publish how many times someone's been abused, it's like, whoa, I'm not sending my kid there. I'm serious. Think of the fight back. But we finally got a lot passed through with the Secretary of Education, who was a great guy that I work with, and others. Folks, this is about changing the culture. Our culture. Our culture. It's not imported from some African nation or some Asian nation. It's our English jurisprudential culture. Our European culture. It says it's all right.
Here's my video that explains why Bernie is a better choice than Biden. And let's not let accounts like MoonCult undermine our political discourse.
We're in a battle for the soul of this nation.
What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is we are not, this is not who we are, the way we're treating people. You're a damn liar, man. It's about decency. You see it on the TV. No, I know you do. And by the way, that's why I'm not sedentary. I get up. Honor. And you want to check my shape on? Let's do push-ups together, man.
You asked him for an IQ test?
Let's take an IQ test. We need to recognize that words matter. Look, Fat, look, here's the deal. Most importantly, is the response heard by our children. Our children are listening. Look, Fat, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal. I was joking. Look, I'm in pretty good
Which is
shape.
what Donald Trump says a lot.
No.
But the point I
Don't
bring it up-
compare me to Donald Trump.
But people
Don't
did.
do
At the
that.
town hall I was
No,
just
they
at.
didn't.
Yes, they did. The woman you met at the end, 94-year-old Mary, said to me, I was so disappointed in him. This is a direct quote. That is not the Joe I know. He sounded like Donald Trump.
Get your words straight, Jack.
In this time when you talk about needing to restore civility, it's so important to so many people.
That's not civil.
I think it was the tone. I think it was the tone that was off-putting to people.
We have to restore dignity to the way we treat people.
How can we trust that you're not fighting for the people profiting off climate change?
Look at my record, child. Look at my record.
You fight for going to the Iraq war and you
We're in a battle for America's soul, man.
We have this classification of families. You should vote for Trump. Families, you should vote for Trump. I'm not going to do that.
The attitude that if you don't agree with me, get in the other party.
Your hand-picked climate advisor served on the board of a fossil fuel company.
That is not the person who's doing my advising. If you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else. There's not a single thing we can't do.
I've looked at your climate plan. Why doesn't it ban fracking?
Now. Is it possible?
Yes.
Well, you ought to vote for somebody else. We are the United States of America. There's not a single thing we can't do.
I'm just wondering how we can trust you when you've continually broken your pledge not to take fossil fuel money and have fundraisers with the CEO.
I have not.
How about your climate change advisor, Heather's Cow? She's actually made $1 million from the fossil fuel industry. We need a Green New Deal, not more corruption.
Thank you for admiring me so much.
What about your plan doesn't ban fracking?
There's an invisible moral fabric that holds up all societies, and it's based on decency.
Your candidate might be better on, I don't know, health care than Joe is. But you've got to look at who's going to win this election.
You got the right candidate in Bernie. You got the right one.
I will tell you what the issue is here. The issue is whether the Democratic Party has the guts to stand up to the healthcare industry, which is charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And if we don't have the guts to do that, if all we can do is take their money, we should be ashamed of ourselves.
Today I say to Donald Trump, you know, you are a really tough guy and you are prepared to shut down the federal government and deny hundreds of thousands of workers a paycheck. Well, let's see how tough you are. Tell General Motors today, no more federal contracts until they deal with Lordstown. Let's see how tough you are.
How are you going to pay off?
I can't. I'm going to kill myself.
Hold on, John. Stop it. You're not going to kill yourself. You know they were in some... Oh, my God.
If you are elected president, in one word, what would you want to be known for?
Compassion.
At a time when we're now spending more on the military than the next 10 countries combined, this budget would expand military spending by $861 billion. Now, for the working families of this country, for the middle class, this is a disastrous budget, but I must confess, there are some good things in it for the wealthiest people in this country. After passing a nearly $2 trillion tax break that mainly benefited the top 1% and large profitable corporations a little over a year ago, the Trump budget would provide another $1 trillion tax break that would, you guessed it, primarily benefit the wealthiest people in this country. Think about it. Cuts to education, throwing millions of people off the health care that they have, cuts to programs that keep seniors warm in the wintertime. Again, more tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country. Mr. Chairman, last year, Amazon, Netflix, General Motors, and IBM, all very profitable corporations, not only paid nothing in federal income taxes, they actually received a tax refund from the IRS. They don't need another tax break when families in this country are struggling to keep their heads above water economically. Mr. President, this is a budget that should be discarded immediately, and a serious budget should be put together that protects working families and not just the 1%. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sanders, for your remarks. Our witness this afternoon is Acting OMB Director Russell Vogt. He oversaw the final development of the present fiscal year 2020 budget submission. Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vogt, when your budget or the President's budget proposes $1.5 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and $845 billion cuts to Medicare, when you propose that, you obviously studied how many people would die as a result of lack of access to health care. What conclusion did you reach? How many thousands of people do you think will die because of massive cuts to Medicare and Medicaid?
Senator, those numbers that you cited are not accurate. We do not cut Medicare by $850 billion. What that doesn't account for is the fact that we take things outside of Medicare, for such as uncompensated care, to non-Medicare beneficiaries. We move that outside of Medicare. We're going to still spend money on uncompensated care for non-Medicare beneficiaries, but when you adjust for the things where we put it back in other parts of the budget, there's no cut at all because Medicare is going up each and every year, and also it's $517 in savings instead of the number that you cited. And there's a
it's going up every year in nominal dollars. I understand that, but you will concede that healthcare inflation is higher than general inflation. So if you're not even keeping up with healthcare inflation, it in fact is a real healthcare cut. I mentioned earlier the very alarming concern that hospitals have about the devastation these cuts will do for senior citizens. And when you cut $1.5 trillion, you're also not including in your calculations the fact that there are more people who will be in the Medicare program. I suspect Medicaid, despite the administration's effort, will continue to expand. But you did not answer my question. There are studies out there which suggest that many thousands of Americans die every single year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. Did you, in your calculations about massive cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, come up with any numbers as to how many Americans will die or maybe get sicker because they don't have the health care that they need?
We don't think any of those scenarios will result. In fact, we look at the current situation when we look at a tragic scenario where a young boy in 2007, 2008, DeMonte Driver, died because of the fact that he had a toothache because of the wait lines within Medicaid. And we say that's a fundamentally broken system. We want a different system. We want states to have more control over
with less money. You want to throw. Look, this president tried to throw millions of people off of Medicaid. Giving a block grant to a state with less money means massive cuts in Medicaid. Let's be honest about what you're doing. Let me ask you this question. President Trump campaigned about not cutting Medicare, not cutting Medicaid, and he's making massive cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. What should the American people think about that?
This budget's title is Promises Kept, Taxpayers First, and for a specific reason. The president kept his promises to the American people in this budget. We do not cut Medicare, we do not cut Social Security, and we do not cut Medicaid.
All right, I would respectfully suggest that is a dishonest answer. I think that's absolutely inaccurate. It is unfactual. And you will have to explain to somebody, not to me, why the hospitals in this country are scared to death about the impact that your budget and President Trump's budget will have on them. Please tell me why it is a good idea to extend tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country who are already doing phenomenally well, and then cut back on the ability of kids to get a college education or senior citizens in this country to stay warm in the wintertime. What is your logic about that one?
We think it's important that families be able to keep more of what is their own money. That's
and what percentage,
philosophical difference of
the tax breaks that you guys passed last year, 83% of those benefits went to the top 1%. In fact, millions of Americans pay more in taxes. So what you are doing here is giving tax breaks to the wealthiest people who are doing phenomenally well. Then you're cutting back on education, making it harder for kids to get a college education. You're cutting back on nutrition programs. Do you really not have a conscience? Do you know that people all over this country, children, seniors...
We're not cutting back on nutrition programs.
Oh, you're not cutting back on the SNAP program?
We have reforms in the SNAP.
Oh, reforms.
Work requirement of a harvest box. We're not...
How much are you cutting back on these programs?
We have about $200 billion in savings from those people.
Savings, I see. See, to listen to these hearings, fellow Americans, you need to get a dictionary. Savings means cuts. Reform means massive cuts. Let's be clear what this budget is. This is a budget that benefits wealthy campaign contributors. This is a budget that goes to war against the working families of this country. This really is, in fact, a disgraceful budget, and I'm happy to say that there are going to be very few people, even Republicans, who will vote for this terrible budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I created a petition to voice our opposition to this disgraceful budget. You can click the link, read it. If you agree with it, you can sign it and share it with others. Please subscribe and click the bell.